Do couples need to have sex in order to have a happy marriage? This show knows the answer. Welcome to my channel, where in this video I will be breaking down the plot of Netflix's Japanese series, My Husband Won't Fit. I suggest to click out of this video if you have not watched the series yet, because this review will contain heavy spoilers for the entire show. But if you have already seen the show or don't mind being spoiled, then let's dive in. My critique on this show will be broken down into 3 sections. 1 is episodes 1 to 5, 2 episodes 6 to 10, and 3 a review/analysis of the whole series. This video will focus only on episodes 1 to 5, so please be aware of that and know that 2 more videos are on their way. If you like this video and want to know what happens at the end of the series, please like and subscribe to my content so you don't miss out on any updates. Be aware that this video also has triggering topics such as... So please, click off if you are not comfortable hearing about those things, and wait for my 3rd video where I'll be reviewing and analyzing the whole series. We begin this journey with Kumi in clear distress as she almost runs her car off of a cliff. Luckily, she stops herself before doing so and leaves her car to calm herself down. An elderly couple passes by in their own car, asking what's wrong with her, to which she responds that her husband is unable to fit inside of her. Quite a blunt thing to confess, right? Well, it turns out that Kumi was just imagining herself confessing that, and in reality just lies and says that nothing is wrong. This scene appears to take place in the distant future, where Kumi is already married, because the next scene shows our lead character meeting her future husband, Ken, in a poor-looking apartment complex. Kumi moves into the apartment for college with the help of her parents, although, while the father appears happy for Kumi's new journey, her mother is the total opposite. The show makes it very clear that Kumi and her mother are not on the best of terms, and as the viewer you're left wondering why. It is mentioned that Kumi has younger sisters that seem to be more valued by the mother, so one could only guess that it's a case of black sheep syndrome. Shortly after the parents leave, we are introduced to Ken, who right off the bat appears far more outgoing than Kumi. Ken helps Kumi with setting up a fridge in her apartment while she quietly stares at him doing so. There's no soundtrack to accompany this scene, so we too are left feeling as uncomfortable as Kumi is in this moment. Despite their obvious differences, Ken invites Kumi to go shopping with him the next day, to which Kumi agrees. As they shop, Kumi reveals that this is the first time she's been away from home, or even lived in a more urban setting. She was pretty sheltered in her small rural community, with the nearest McDonald's over an hour away by car. Over a short period of time, Kumi and Ken grow closer, and Ken asks Kumi if she will be his girlfriend. Personally, I didn't see much of a connection between these two unless you count them having the opposites attract trope, but stuff like that does not always work. Kumi can be painfully introverted to the point where you want to shake her and scream, "Speak up already!" And mind you, this is coming from a fellow introvert here. As the main character, following her point of view can get boring because of this. But I figured with Ken around, she would open up a little bit more. At the most, we see a scene where one of Ken's friends tease the pair, saying that they play like brother and sister. And the scene of them playing is pretty cute. But that was right before Ken proposed to Kumi, which left me feeling a bit icky since they were just compared to being siblings. Nevertheless, Kumi accepts Ken's proposal to be his girlfriend, and this is where the main conflict of the story begins. The new couple attempt to make love in their apartment for the first time, only to discover that there's a problem. Ken doesn't fit. We are unaware of why this is happening, and the couple is also, but they decide not to force anything further. Cut to a new scene where they're eating with their college friends, and I was a little surprised at how quick those friends were into talking about sex. As soon as they learn that Kumi and Ken are dating, they joke about how often they must be fooling around since they live in the same apartment complex. And to this, the couple bows their head in shame. I thought the Japanese culture was more private about that. Kumi and Ken try a new strategy in the hopes of finally being able to physically connect, which involves them watching together. After watching it for a bit, they attempt to make love, only for it to fail once more. And the episode ends off with Kumi pleasing Ken in another way that YouTube will not allow me to describe in detail. The first episode is the foundation of a story, before it gets into the really juicy stuff. So I will give this episode a pass for not being very entertaining. It was a little too slow paced for my liking, and Kumi was also extremely shy, where I wasn't even sure what type of stuff she liked or her own motivations. We get a glimpse into Kumi's former high school life as she ties a rope between all of her classmates, symbolically representing how all of their sex lives have been intertwined with one another. All of the gossip on who is sleeping with who, who's bad in bed, etc. Kumi describes her disgust with how casually her classmates sleep around with whoever they want, and she vows to never be like one of them. We cut to another scene where there is a festival during nighttime, and Kumi follows a random boy into an abandoned home, where they exchange barely any words before making love. But wait! In the last episode, we clearly saw her having trouble doing it with her soon-to-be husband. Apparently, her first time sleeping with someone actually went very smoothly, and that random boy had no problem fitting inside her. This makes Kumi's frustration even worse, since unlike what we were led to believe in the previous episode, Kumi is not a virgin. But Kumi fears that telling Ken that she has successfully done it before would make him angry, so she decides to keep it a secret. That was strike one for me with hating Kumi. I didn't want to, but I couldn't help it. I wanted to root for her, but it was so annoying to see how she could have easily told Ken of what happened in her past, because it could be a factor into solving their problem. Not to mention, this secret makes her appear to be a complete hypocrite against her former classmates. While they were openly expressive about their love lives, Kumi hid hers, but still held a moral high ground just because it was with someone who was not in her classroom. It was still a stranger, in a random, seemingly unsafe location. If anything, Kumi was just as guilty of what she thought of as sexual deviancy. We are told that it has been 2 years since Kumi and Ken met, and they both still seem to be very much in love with each other. Yet their sexual life remains stagnant. Kumi narrates that they pleasure one another in other ways that don't involve penetration, and they are both satisfied staying that way. Although we know, being in Kumi's mind, that she longs for more. She longs to please her boyfriend as any regular girlfriend could. But before she could think of new ideas, Ken announces that he's going to study to become a teacher. He successfully achieves that goal and becomes a teacher. Although because of this, he has to work further away from the apartment, to which Kumi cries about that. She fears losing Ken due to the distance, but they easily work it out to get closer together. Follow in his footsteps. Kumi decides that she too wants to become a teacher, so she could be closer to Ken. On top of that, Ken proposes to Kumi, this time to be his wife. Kumi says yes, but he must gain the permission of her parents first. Speaking of, there's a flashback of Kumi as a child at some point where her single aunt explains how miserable Kumi's mother is. She tells young Kumi that her dad cheats on the mom all the time, and despite wanting to leave him, she is unable to due to her financial instability, which leads the aunt to tell Kumi this well-intentioned yet badly executed life lesson. Present day, and the couple visits Kumi's parents to reveal their engagement, and the mother is eager to criticize Kumi's personality, appearance, and abilities. All to ask Ken why on earth would he want to marry someone like her. It comes off a little comical by how downright cruel the mother can be. But I'm sure there are, unfortunately, many mothers with this caliber of hate for their children. Ken refutes those negative accusations about Kumi, and states that he will love her no matter what. Kumi's parents ultimately agree to the engagement and plan to eat a nice meal to celebrate. During the preparations, Kumi's mother notices how tight Kumi's engagement ring is on her finger, so she jumps in to remove it by adding soap and water. This method of removing the ring sparks a light bulb moment for Kumi. After a trip to the store, Kumi convinces Ken to try fitting again, but this time using baby oil. It seems to work at first, until Ken discovers something horrific. A copious amount of blood comes out of Kumi as Ken tries to insert himself. And to Kumi's dismay, Ken is so traumatized by the sight that he refuses to push any further in fear of harming Kumi. And with that, the episode ends. This episode felt a little faster in pace and entertaining to watch, with the beginning with Kumi's past to her working to be a teacher like Ken, and finally to that dreadful ending where Kumi's hope with the baby oil was crushed. There were a lot of factors in this episode that kept me interested in watching more. Just like Ken, Kumi successfully becomes a teacher, but not just any teacher, an elementary school teacher. Immediately, I felt this underlying problem with Kumi being in this position. I felt this uneasiness that this is not really what Kumi wants. And after completing the show, I still hold this to be true. Remember the motivation behind Kumi wanting to be a teacher? Think of her personality up to that point. Her motivation to get to this position was because she wanted to be closer to Ken. Essentially, doing something for her boyfriend. Ken doesn't seem to be a horrible husband who would force his wife to do something for his benefit, but he still didn't argue with Kumi about whether this was the best route to take in her life. He clearly knew her intentions for doing this. Why not comfort Kumi and suggest to wait until she finds passion in something she really enjoys instead of going the easy route? Anyways, we see Kumi interacting well with her students, but one in particular stands out. Not for anything good, but rather peculiar. A little boy keeps getting one Japanese character incorrect, and when Kumi confronts him about this, he responds by saying that the teacher knows what it's supposed to mean, so why should it matter if it's spelled incorrectly? But one day, Kumi is told that she will be transferred to a new school with older children who are infamous for driving their former teacher to quit his job. This will be unlike Kumi's current class, but she agrees to teach the older class anyways. Kumi is warned by her co-workers that a girl named Miyuki is the ringleader of the classroom and is considered the main instigator of the last teacher's mental breakdown. Yet when we are introduced to her, she comes off invested in the class, or as I saw it, invested in Kumi. Miyuki asks Kumi about her personal life, including what she thinks about her husband, to which Kumi answers this question in a very positive light. This delights the classroom, and more students begin to ask questions until class is finished. To Kumi, this was a great start in building a relationship with her students, but to me, it was just a total mistake. I haven't been a teacher for very long, but even I know a class isn't that productive when all that's happening is your students learning about your life. That's just giving them ammo to use against you when they eventually drive you insane, which they do. When Kumi returns home, she does some chores and cleans the bedroom, only to discover something very interesting. A business card for a brothel called Big Boobed Girl is on the floor and has 10 squares on it with 9 stamped out, revealing that her husband, who appeared to be kind and understanding, was actually visiting this place to have affairs. Now this is where the story gets juicy. I was genuinely surprised to learn about Ken's affairs. I even tried to make excuses for why he would have the card for this brothel. Maybe he was getting tips on how to make love to his wife. I was so silly. Kumi is clearly devastated to learn of Ken's infidelity, but she doesn't confront him about it. And with that, it was strike 2 for Kumi. I know, she was the one being cheated on, but I was already growing sick of this avoidance behavior that she's been displaying since the beginning of the show. Ken, while flawed, was much more dynamic of a character than Kumi. I know that he's outgoing, patient, to an extent, and ambitious. Kumi is quiet, sensitive, and dependent on Ken. This doesn't mean anyone with Kumi's character traits are bad people, but I was hoping by episode 3 that there would be a bit more development to her. Like Ken, he starts to cheat on Kumi with other women, but I still found myself rooting for him to be an upstanding husband. Even so, the fact that this is confirmed in my face and I was in denial goes to show how invested I was in this character to succeed, because he was the type of person I wanted to succeed. Kumi as well, but honestly, she didn't do much for herself that didn't rely on the approval of Ken, and once Ken is cheating on her, she doesn't try to stand up for herself and make him face his actions, or at least talk things through to rectify the relationship. I find Kumi to not only be a flawed character, but a spineless person with no redeeming qualities. Upon learning about Ken's affairs at the brothel, Kumi becomes a little more obsessed with sex in general. Instances include how she has these home meetings with several parents to her students. She looks at these parents and thinks to herself, they have sex, and they have sex, and even they have sex. Kumi also watches TV about housewives discussing things like sex being used as a weapon to get what they want. Everything around her seems like it's rubbing it in her face about how she is unable to get intimate with Ken. Kumi tries to talk to Ken without bringing up the brothel, but as a viewer you can tell she hopes for him to admit what he's doing without her bringing it up herself. But Ken acts like nothing is wrong. Another issue arises for Kumi when she is having trouble reaching the mother of alleged problem student Miyuki. The mother is infamous among the staff as being obsessed with a married man whom she used to sleep with. She, like Miyuki, is a whole big problem in her own right, but Kumi must try to reach out anyways. So Kumi visits Miyuki's apartment complex late at night, and while trying to reach the mother by knocking on the door, she discovers that the mother was actually not inside the apartment, but in a car that just pulled up in the parking lot. Miyuki's mother is sitting in the car with what appears to be the married man she's so fond over. The man wants nothing more to do with her and tells her to leave his car. Yet Miyuki's mom doesn't take the hint and rushes over to try and pleasure the man by removing his pants. The married man is shocked by this behavior and has to physically force her out of his car in order to not be assaulted. This entire scuffle happened with Kumi being the only witness, and when Miyuki's mom is defeated, she shamefully walks upstairs to her apartment, where she crosses paths with Kumi, and Miyuki's mom is very unsure of why Kumi was there at all. The following day, we are back in Kumi's classroom where the kids are supposed to be quietly at work, when Miyuki asks Kumi if she can pick up her book. Kumi says that she can. Another kid asks the same question. Kumi says yes. A third student asks, and Kumi catches on that this class is on some elaborate scheme, so she gets annoyed with them and asks what they're doing. Kumi refuses to answer and instead goes over to pick up the desk herself, which gives Miyuki an opening to announce that the class should start playing games, and everyone erupts in a cheer before standing up and creating chaos in the classroom, doing whatever they want, as loud as they want. Kumi calls out to Miyuki since she was the instigator for this mess, but Miyuki only looks at her blankly and continues playing with her friends. We cut to nighttime, where Kumi is back in Miyuki's apartment complex, and confronts her mother about being a neglectful parent. Kumi berates the mother for how she leaves Miyuki all by herself at night to chase men. Even though if I were Kumi, I'd rather bring up Miyuki's misdemeanors in class, but anyways. Kumi is angry with the mother, but she is stunned when the mother responds with, At this question, a group of women rush out of their own apartments in shock and circle around Kumi to mock her for this problem. They make fun of her and say how dare she get angry at the mother when she is unable to have proper intercourse with her own husband. This is when Kumi makes a statement that will persist throughout the show, and that is that marriage isn't about just having sex, but about the love that you bring into it. They don't need to have sex in order to be in love, and sex shouldn't be put on such a high pedestal. The women don't listen though, and continue to make fun of her. But thankfully for Kumi, this was all a dream. She actually didn't confront the mother or get teased by the other women. It was a part of her inner fears of her problems in the bedroom. Ken wakes up to her freaking out in the middle of the night from this nightmare and comforts her about it. Kumi is embraced by Ken, but when she asks if he goes to his parents tomorrow, he says that he was planning on it. The episode ends with Kumi visiting the brothel and uttering the phrase, "If my husband could fit inside me." Kumi repeats this over and over nearing the credits. "And if I could face Miyuki's mother," she adds, "then none of this would be happening." And the episode ends with her about to lose control of her car, reverting back to the very first scene we saw back in episode 1. Episode 5 starts with Kumi narrating a story about a former classmate named Keiko. Keiko was usually forgettable in class, and nobody ever paid attention to her, until she developed breasts around her 9th grade year. All of the boys are comically ogling at her chest as she runs or just sits as she reads a book. Keiko doesn't enjoy all of the attention, so she left that school to study from home, and eventually moved to a high school very far away. Kumi tells the audience that she wonders what became of Keiko, before looking at the sign of the brothel, which has an image of a woman with large breasts smiling in a bikini. The first time I watched this scene, I thought it was implying that Keiko embraced her body and became the mascot for the brothel, to which I thought, that's kind of depressing. I don't know about you, it could be empowering, but given how this brothel has driven a wedge between our main couple, it wouldn't have felt nice to know that Keiko was selling her body. Thankfully, I watched that part again and realized that this woman wasn't Keiko. Kumi specifically states that she was only thinking about Keiko as she looked at the brothel because of obvious reasons. Kumi drifts off into another thought that there may be two kinds of women in this world, those for sex and those for love. Kumi knows this probably isn't true, but she has to convince herself to be comfortable with that idea. With that in mind, Kumi bows towards the brothel and requests it to continue taking care of her husband. Feeling lonely and with no friends to talk to about her problems, Kumi creates an account on an online chat site where she finds a woman whom she feels comfortable talking to about Ken's affair. This woman makes her feel so safe and valued that she considers meeting up in person. But before that decision can be made, we cut to another chaotic day in Kumi's classroom. The children are up to no good, as they are being rowdy and fooling around under Miyuki's command. Kumi tries to establish control again by writing some lessons on the chalkboard, and Miyuki takes note of this. Miyuki gives Kumi a blank yet cold stare that, props to the actress, because it made me want to yell at her and run away at the same time. Not many children can make you hate and be afraid of them all at once. The other kids ask Miyuki if she's okay, to which she responds that they should stop playing this game because it's boring. We see Kumi gain some relief from the statement, looking at Miyuki with hope like, finally, you get that I just want to help you guys. But not long after, Miyuki yells, let's play another game instead! And they resume their misbehavior, leaving Kumi in more despair than she was before. I felt so silly for believing that Miyuki changed on my first viewing, when this is just classic manipulative behavior. The second time watching is so obvious that Miyuki wanted to make Kumi more miserable by giving her that small bit of hope that she could have a nice group of kids. Seriously, Miyuki should be the mascot for birth control. Days go by and Kumi is bombarded with countless cards from the brothel Ken attends every time he visits its parents, with red stamps covering each card. Kumi can't take it anymore. She's been driven up a wall. Her cheating husband, her disrespectful kids, her insecurities in the bedroom. She has nothing she enjoys except for talking to this female friend over the internet. So, she finally agrees on the offer of meeting this friend in person. I may have missed Miyuki's manipulation the first time, but I definitely knew what was going to happen with this friend of Kumi's when they would meet. Do you want to guess what happened? You got 3 seconds. You probably knew before time was up. The friend turns out to be a man. The man didn't really lie about his gender. Kumi just assumed that he was female. So naturally, Kumi is surprised that her friend wasn't what she expected. This twist makes Kumi very uncomfortable, especially since this male friend suggests that they go to a hotel to eat lunch together and talk. You can see from his mannerisms that this man lacks any class. He's obnoxious, gluttonous, and overall unappealing to be around. But Kumi never tries to leave the situation and follows him to a hotel where they eat lunch. Well, more like he eats lunch. She's just sitting there with her head down. The man doesn't seem bothered by this behavior. It's an intense clash of personalities in this scene. The man says that he's going to the bathroom, and while he's in there, Kumi decides that she will actively try to escape this situation. Now, this scene infuriated the heck out of me, because we as the audience know from this moment that the man stepped out of his car, that he was bad news, and she knows it, but she's too shy to do anything to save herself. When she tries to leave, you're just yelling at your screen to go faster, because she moves at a snail's pace, taking mere inches of footsteps towards the door, like a kid trying to not wake up his family in the middle of the night. This isn't a game, Kumi. Your life is on the line. That's what I thought when I first saw it. And to my dismay, I was kind of right. Kumi gets her hand on the doorknob before the man leaves the bathroom and questions why she's trying to get out. Before she can answer, Kumi is swooped up in the man's arms and taken to the bed where she is laid on her back so the man can force himself upon her. He starts by removing her clothes and kissing on her neck and chest, ignoring Kumi's protest for him to stop. She's hitting him, trying to push away, and begging for this to stop because she has a husband back home. But the man doesn't budge. Kumi gives up not long after her protesting, and just laying there with a blank stare, because she is at least confident that if he tries to get inside her that it won't work, because it hasn't worked with her husband for so long. That's what she thought. But to Kumi's horror, the man does find a way to have intercourse with her, the way that she has longed to do with her husband since she's known him. This moment was intended to be humorous for the audience. I could tell by how, once he was inside her, a goofy soundtrack started playing, and we only see Kumi's astonished expression as she is being assaulted by this creepy man. Kumi is completely silent and still as a statue throughout this ordeal. Meanwhile, this man is gleefully moaning and grunting until he finishes inside of Kumi and rolls onto the bed in a sweaty, proud mess. Kumi quickly gets up and bundles up her clothes, saying that she has to leave because what she did was wrong. The man calls out for her, whining about how they only did it one time, and falls back on the bed, sighing exasperatedly. If this scene was meant to be taken seriously, then it does a very poor job executing that. This scene took me to a place of anger that I have rarely ever felt for a show. I didn't bother watching the scene again for 2 reasons. 1, because it was too disturbing, and 2, because it was so disturbing, I remember it super well. So there is no point in double checking to get my facts straight. I know what I saw, and what I saw was a stranger forcing our main character to have sex, or in other words. If you want to see the scene, which I doubt you would, but if you do, Notice the tone. The tone sets the stage for how the audience should feel at the time. What do you think it's trying to say? With the funny music, Kumi's exaggerated expressions, the man's childish way of speaking, and the end where he complains about not doing it again being equivalent to a kid not getting more candy, I think I'm correct in assuming that A was played off for laughs, and that is not okay. Not in this story. Kumi didn't deserve that. Not just the assault, but for how it was addressed as a joke rather than a traumatic moment. This is a scene that begins Kumi's descent into a point of no return, and it needed to be treated as such. When Kumi returns home, Ken wishes to snuggle with her, but she is so disgusted with herself that she tells Ken that she needs to bathe. We linger on Kumi being stuck in her own mind, reliving what just happened from that day. The following day is no better. Her class is once again being rowdy, but another teacher steps in and shuts them all up, saying that they must listen to Kumi and sit in their seats. The kids do as they are told, and the teacher leaves. Kumi attempts to teach the class only to be met with wadded balls of paper to the face. One after the other, Miyuki and the rest of the class pummel her with paper balls, reverting back to their rude behavior when the other teacher left, and leaving the scene off in a very somber note, with Kumi losing all hope in teaching this class. We see Kumi back at her computer on the online chat forums that she was on when she met her attacker. Any rational person would cut all ties with that man and the website altogether, but Kumi, in her depressive state, starts to talk to a new individual who requests that they meet up in person. Kumi agrees right away, and the episode ends with Kumi in her car, driving towards another hotel, and seeing that scene play out that first time made me want to throw up. Just recounting episode 5 made me feel sick all over again, but it gets even worse. Stick around to see my breakdown of episodes 6 to 10 and my review of the entire show in the future. What will Kumi do next? Will Ken ever stop cheating? Can Miyuki stop being a brat? Find out by liking and subscribing to my channel so you don't miss out on all the answers. But for now, take care.